most everyone's met me except Jilian.
So, Barry Shainbaum has had an adventurous life. I've heard some of his presentations in the mental health scenario. Where did we go? Waterloo?
A few years ago?
We go far. Waterloo or Cambridge or something.
Years ago. Yeah, wow. Wow.
I was such a dedicated one. I drove for like an hour.
I don't remember now.
Anyway, so I have seen him do one of his presentations to people who are in the healthcare industry, trying to take care of people with mental health, and it was phenomenal to see some of the reactions in the real life, because they come at them from a textbook of real life, and so very different real life examples. And something about he pretended to be a policeman one day.
I never pretended.
Oh, sorry. He was a policeman.
2 hours.
It's
college break.
Gotcha. And all these neat things. Now that he's lived through them, they're neat, interesting stories. But at the time, that was tough. And coming back.
Oh.
Are you okay, Donald? At the time, it was not a good place to be, and being brave enough to share some of that stuff with everybody is pretty cool. And then giving back to help other people, themselves or other people's families is very good. So, Barry, the guy with many hats, and
I gave up my police badge in 1974 after being an officer for 2 hours. That's another story. So the presentation today is, I've called it the Entrepreneurial Mind. And, entrepreneur is a word that is used in all different ways. Generally, what it's meant to refer to is a business person identifying a need and taking the steps to build a successful business around it. And it's interesting because you hear of, the Richard Branson entrepreneur, and boy, isn't he successful. And you hear of entrepreneurs taking great risks, and it seems foolish or foolhardy risks. But in reality, in most cases, when a true entrepreneur takes a risk, it's less risky than the average person, because the true entrepreneur has weighed the pros and cons so deliberately, and after careful deliberation on the different degrees of risk, the chance of a true entrepreneur succeeding is perhaps greater than someone who isn't. So I think most things in life we can learn, but we can learn to become more passionate, but passion comes from the heart. And the true entrepreneur aligns themselves with something they're connected to, they're passionate about. And the more any of us can connect with our passion, we increase the chance of contributing successfully and building a business. A couple of lines that Fran said to me years ago. One of my friends said to me, what's the purpose of business in life? Well, one is sell your strengths, buy your weaknesses. And it's simple but so powerful. Because for those of us who don't love, let's say, bookkeeping or accounting or even cleaning the house, if we take the energy from us to do what we don't want to, and we can afford to pay some, we're actually draining our own energy. And another one is maximize the positive, minimize the weakness. And I believe every entrepreneur tries to be efficient in what you do. An entrepreneur has to believe in themselves and the ability to withstand fear and failure. And we also have to be realistic when we're working on an area, say it's a new business or expanding business, if it's just not working. Maybe it's because the location is wrong, the timing is wrong, politics are wrong, whatever it is. So I always say assess and reassess. Right? The entrepreneurial mind will keep all these things into account. The next one I like is rule breaking. Is very important. All creativity involves the breaking of ties to pre-accepted notions. And there's a book I had years ago by Nolan Bushnell, and if you just want to write that down if you're interested, Nolan Bushnell. He was like a pioneer in writing about creativity, and sometimes to have a new mindset, to create a new business or a new way of thought, involves saying goodbye to the old beliefs. And sometimes you need to, sometimes you incorporate the old beliefs with the new beliefs. And I believe that in life and business, everything is fluid. So I want to give a quote here from a previous therapist of mine. The reason I believe I've become so entrepreneurial is because of a long journey in mental illness in the past. I overcame bipolar disorder just shy of 5 years ago. And it's a very long journey of stuff that started when I was 18, when I was 22, and then when I was 36, more stuff. And along the road, I probably lost, I did mention you lost about 10 years. You haven't worked for 10 years. I lost about maybe 3 to 4 years of my life. But I do believe in the time down, we actually can learn something from it and perhaps come out even stronger. So the reason I don't have bipolar disorder anymore is because I used to be on med for 20 years, and I was in talk therapy, a lot of different types of individual groups for 27 years. The other continues it. So the previous therapist of mine, whose first name is also Barry, I went to see him many years ago after terminating psychotherapy, feeling I didn't need anymore. Then I got really confused. See, now I run 5 businesses, and then I used to run 2. And when I was running 2 businesses about 10 years ago, that was just photography, getting into speaking, I knew the line that if you want to get good in something, you focus theme for today. Let's say it's business, or it's insurance, or it's internet, or you know, and all these things that we all do. Focus, 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 focus. So I was working in photography, and I got into speaking, and I got confused. Well, I'm a photographer and a speaker. I'm a photographer and a speaker, and I started to get very confused. I just, well, how can you get good in 2 things if you're doing 1 thing? So I went back to him. I was really quite agitated. He thought, oh my God, what's going on with Barry? And I told him, and he said 1 line to me. And I said to me, thank you, I don't have to go back anymore. And this is what he said to me. He said, why do you think you have to listen to rules made by other people? Now, we're not talking about breaking the rules of society or getting across, yeah, that sort of thing, but it's ways of thinking. So instead of thinking, I'm going to do 1 thing good, why can't I do 2 things good? Now I have 5 careers. I believe I do 5 things good. And I had a guest in my radio show just recently who is a magician, a former tax lawyer. His name is David Ben. And he has like 6 or 7 careers. And he says, well, you know, I should hear the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. And I say, why can't I master all of them? And I said, right on. Why can't you? Why can't you master 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, or stay with the 1? And I believe by choosing the thoughts we put in our heads, we can maximize the positive aspects of what we're doing. So it's interesting how 1 word or 1 sentence from someone who understands things, if we can agree with it for ourselves, that can be turning points. That can be difference in our lives. In entrepreneurship and business in general, I also believe it's important to see the success before it happens. And when I was rebuilding my life starting 25 years ago, I used to nearly live in Book City, you know, and now I hear they're actually closing the one in Minneapolis, which is very sad. And I basically hang out in the self-help section and read all the books and occasionally buy them. And some of the books talk about visualization. I thought it was focus. See in your mind's eye, like inside yourself, what you want. And the rules go, that you have to follow in this case, is whatever you want, you tell yourself you already got it. I thought that was crap. Because, you know, I want the Lamborghini like Justin Bieber, which is just another story. you know, I want the Toyota, you know, say you don't have a car. Well, how could you say you have it? Well, when you tell yourself, your subconscious mind you have it, it exists in a certain part of your brain. So it exists. You've got to write it down. And then you tell yourself you already have it. Then you still have to work at it. And I've had amazing things happen. And probably most people can talk about when you visualize something that you already have it and you work towards it, you increase the chance that you will get it. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Also, a trait of an entrepreneur is, I wrote down, persistent tenacity. and perseverance. And I'm astrologically, my sun sign is in Taurus. So, boy, are we ever persistent. Sometimes we're so persistent, we're big-headed. The thing about persistence, tenacity, perseverance, is to persist in a direction that you think is correct. But eventually you realize, I'm knocking down the wrong door, or walking or driving down the wrong road. Okay, so it's not so terrible. Find another road. Sit down and have some quiet time, and continue in another direction. Assess and reassess. And then persist in that direction. That doesn't work, then do another one. And I found that has helped me in so many ways. Let's talk about just a few things. We'll give a little bit of overlap from yesterday, but not in a huge way. I want to talk about, for instance, this is something I didn't talk about yesterday. I used to have a client who worked in Toronto Public Relations, and then she moved up to North Bay, and she was the head of public relations. She was for Northeast Mental Health Center, previously known as North Bay Psychiatric Hospital, now known as Northeast Mental Health Center. And I called her up on a whim about 5-6 years ago and said, how's it going, and blah, blah. She says, oh, Barry, we have a conference coming up, and the topic has to do around photography and mental health. Could we pay you a lot of money to come up here? I said, well, sure. twist my arm.
No.
You know.
Let me think about it. I'll get back to you.
My keynote rate is not up to $50,000, but I'll produce it. You know. So, like I talked about yesterday, like PCX do, sometimes when you just reach out and see, is there a hole that needs to be filled in the conference, or is there some way I could be of service, or even volunteer, hoping eventually the volunteer might end up to a paying job. You never know. One of my theories is you never know when you try. My book, Hope and Heroes, which came out like 12 years ago, happened in a phone conversation. I had the idea. Have you heard of Charles Templeton, the late Charles Templeton? Charles Templeton was a very good friend of Billy Graham. They're both evangelists. I said Charles went from evangelism to agnosticism. Charles is an author of many books and a successful medium and a true entrepreneur. And I called him up out of the phone book. Remember phone books? The phone book about 15 years ago, and I said, Charles, can I come over to your home and photograph you? And he went, okay. I mean, he didn't know who I was, but maybe he thought that I sounded fine on the phone. I went to this beautiful 5,000 square foot condo at 701 Don Mills Road. It's this incredible place, and I brought my camera equipment and photographed it. And then 6 years later, I called him back in '98. I said, Charles, the next time you talk to your friend Billy Graham, can you ask him if I can photograph? And Charles said to me these exact words. He said, I don't want to go into this thing blind. What exactly do I tell Billy Graham? I went, well, tell Billy I'm doing a project on people with integrity and how they've impacted positively on the world. And then I said to myself, what a great idea for a book.
And what's your book called?
Hope and Heroes. It's now an ebook, actually, on my website. It's like $7. I have a few hardcover copies left, but it's also an ebook. So here's where it ties into synchronicity, tying the two. So the year was 1998. It was only 9 years since I moved out of a psychiatric boarding house where I ended up when I went through hell and high water with my previous illness of bipolar disorder, and I'm still rebuilding. And I had this idea to do a book. Well, where do you start? It's like this, like going out on a date for the first time. So here's where synchronicity kicked in. I was in my writing studio with Adelaide and Peter, and 20 minutes after saying, I don't know what to do, there was a knock at my door. And it wasn't Jesus, and it wasn't Buddha, and it wasn't Moses. It was Steve Thompson. Steve Thompson was a rock promoter who had some CDs for people temporarily sharing my studio in their music business. And he says, oh, I see you're a photographer. I also sell tripods. I don't know why he sells tripods. We went down to the street with a white Cadillac, and he showed me some tripods, and I was impressed by his drive. I said, Steve, I have an idea. Can we meet for coffee? So a few days later, we went to a coffee shop called Java, still there, on Queen Street West, just a little west of Savannah. We sat down. We had like a napkin, and I said, Steve, I have this idea to approach these people like Nelson Mandela and some movie actors who are social activists and some maybe political leaders and musicians do this stuff. Maybe you could work with me, because he had a background as a promoter. So he worked with me for 6 months in his office in Scarborough. And he helped tie down access to Nelson Mandela, who's in my book. Robert Schuller, who used to be from the Hour of Power in Crystal Cathedral. I was impressed by his talking on possibility thinking. And he worked for me for 6 months, and then I got somebody else. So he showed up at my door 20 minutes after saying, I don't know how to do it. Now, if we just wait for someone to knock at the door with a phone to ring, that's like buying the book The Secret and thinking, well, I just paid $30 and nothing's happening, I want a refund. It doesn't work that way. You have to make the effort. I found that success is a certain amount of inspiration and a lot more perspiration. And I've read that line. I totally believe in it. My speaking, which is the main part of my business right now in schools, happened through an amazing opportunity. I guess we'd also call it synchronicity. I've spoken in some schools 2 years ago. I wasn't getting all that busy in school. And my partner Gina and I were skiing with the High Park Ski Club in the Eastern Townships. And a woman in my classes for lessons, we were chatting, and she said she has extra money to spend. She's a principal. I said, I can help you spend it. I'm a speaker.
You're not even in the correct province.
Well, actually, she's from Toronto.
But you're from here, but you're both.
Yeah, and we're in Quebec. It's like, for instance, when I used to shoot weddings, I shot a wedding of a young German couple, both from Toronto, who met in Germany on holidays, and we both come back to Toronto to get engaged. So sometimes you never know. She eventually became a superintendent. I spoke in the school, and I've done a lot of speaking in schools in Mississauga and Brampton, because I pivot to a stranger about, well, I can help you spend your money, because I speak in schools. And so that led to a documentary on me, the 2 school boards have made, and other stuff. So I believe it all comes back to taking chances, to talking to people, to believing, to visualizing, to having tenacity. And I believe that opportunities are always out there. And it's not always easy, even with the most successful people. It doesn't mean it's always busy. And like Coca-Cola has great brand recognition, right? So why don't they advertise? Because they still do. So to remember, even when we become successful, it's like we still have to be out there and talk to people and market and have their ideas. Oh, my good time. Go ahead.
As much time as you want.
So,
don't tell them that.
Let me ask questions.
Yeah. I'll tell you one story about my radio. How I got into radio. I talked about that yesterday. I don't think I talked about it. Not in detail. So I'm the accidental broadcaster in that I never set out to be a radio broadcaster. Most of you know I'm in Kitchener every Sunday working the radio show. Now I'm in 9th year. It's a show on life and society. The majority of my guests are authors and a lot of academics. And I got this show because I was going to visit a friend who was dying from cancer in Stanford. So now I'll give you the details of how it happened. Peter Ursbender is about the only dead person who has his own website. His suicide is up, but Peter Ursbender was an amazing speaker, business speaker. And I knew him through the speaking profession, and he got cancer, and I went to visit him at home. And he said to me, can you bring your camera? It might be the last pictures I get. And I brought my camera and visited him about 9 years ago. And we had a nice chat. Then on the way back, basically, it's a short form, I had to find a washroom. So New Hamburg is outside the kitchen on the way back. I went there, and then there was a bookstore. I went to the bookstore. I said, oh, I have a book. Do you want to take it on consignment? He said, yes. And I said, well, I also do presentations. Do you want to do an event? So a few weeks later, myself and two fiction writers at Mimi's Cafe across the street, the bookstore in Hamburg, we had a presentation. And then to promote it, the bookstore got me on your FM community radio in Kitchener talking about the event. And then through other connections, I was given names of media in Kitchener that I live in Toronto. And the one station that returned my calls was Faith FM, the Evangelical Christian station, and I'm Jewish. So they had me on the show talking about my life and my book. And the station manager says to me, oh, you want your own show? I thought, when did Shainbaum become a Christian surname? Shainbaum. And I said, sure, why? He says, well, he says, well, Christian station, religious license, the CRTC that mandate telecommunications in Canada requires we have a little bit of non-Christian programming. Do you want your own show? Okay. So started a few weeks later, half-hour show on Sunday morning at the Shainbaum. And I had some of my Jewish friends on. We talked about numbers and issues. But within about 6 to 7 months, it evolved, not even by plan, but by sort of following what was important to me was more authors, shows on overcoming adversity, mental illness. Also having musicians, because I'm also a musician, a lot of musicians in the studio and my phone. And it's evolved now. It's on all 4 Christian sister stations every Sunday. And I have a who's who of authors. And it came because when I was offered a show, it would have been easier to say no. Well, I'm a photographer. Why do I come to Kitchener every Sunday and do a show? And I thought, well, okay, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. So it's evolved, and I find anything. Again, it comes down to opportunities are passing us by. Sometimes we've got to reach out and grab it. Sometimes it comes to us. So you had a question?
Well, I was just thinking that, ideas, they come to us so easily.
Yeah.
But the next step is implementing those ideas.
Right.
And so there's something there that can take you from the idea stage to that next step. What do you find is people are missing in that step?
I believe.
Because I've done that many times. I always think I'm ahead of the times. I was ahead of the times of the internet back then, and I had all these ideas, but I never went forward with it. And then now I see everything unfolding.
It's easy to lose. It's easy to lose faith in yourself. It's understandable. And getting momentum is not always easy. I would say setting written goals, and even the smallest goal, step forward is a step forward. So when I started my photography business, after I left the contract at the Ministry of Energy as an AV coordinator in '82, I sat down in my apartment on Indian Road, just down here, at my desk facing out the street with a phone book, and I said, well, I don't have any photography clients except that one that I mentioned earlier, the Marina. So how do you start? So I sat down with the phone book. I really don't like cold calling, but I can do it. I wrote down the script, like, my name is Shainbaum. I'd make it 3 or 4 lines and get to the person that makes the decision. So I made a goal that I needed to make calls every day, 5 days a week. So I decided that I would start off with, say, 5 cold calls a day. And that can be brutal or it can be easy. And then I increased it to 10. And I still have my logs going back all these years. And so I average about 30, 40 cold calls a day. So I call every advertising agency, every public relations agency, insurance companies that hire photographers, stores, all these different places, and I built it up. And it wasn't easy making the calls, but it was how would you do it?
The goal for the call was just to get in front of them.
Just to make the call. Yeah. And even in my present business, at times when things slow down, I say, well, make a goal of 1 call a day. Because 1 call a day is better than no call a day. Or make it 5 or make it 10. It's also important to look at all different ways of advertising. And I think a real important thing is just having faith. Just having faith in yourself.
I call myself the brainstorming team. Because I can come up with lots of ideas, but then I don't always fulfill those ideas.
Why don't you fulfill them?
Unless that's the question. What is that missing link?
What do you think it is?
Sure. I think, and it could be in our houses, in our families, in our businesses, that we do think of these mint ideas or projects. And one of the things is stop and almost do the advantages, disadvantages, or the whole picture. And the one example pops in my head. I had a customer who we decided on a marketing strategy. He was going to send gift boxes to his potential customers. So I had to buy the real nice boxes. There was a DVD, or not DVD, audio-only CD. That was a mini workshop. There was a Tim Hortons gift card and a letter. And they had to be hand-delivered. And so we got this strategy. And then he looks at me and he goes totally white. And what if nobody buys? And I was like, chances are that's not going to happen. But I sat down and I did all the math. And came back to him and said, okay, based on how we set this up, if nobody buys, you're out $722.10. If 5 people buy, you're out this much, because if they bought, then it involved other expenses and stuff. And once we had that information, now he was ready to do the project. So I think sometimes we don't stop and figure out the advantages, disadvantages. And the other thing that we don't do a good job of is really getting passionate, is the word you use, about whatever we thought of.
Yeah, I think faith has a lot to do with it, or belief, but you can do it.
Right, for instance, I was just writing it down, because often stuff will come to me at the weirdest places, like in the shower, on the bus, or somewhere, and I write it down, solidify, otherwise it evaporates like a cloud. And
I write it down, but then I have lists and lists of things.
Well,
Well, I want to suggest in general, like particularly when you have a list, I mean, it's great to make lists. I would say start easily. In other words, let's say it's now Thursday, right? On Monday, give yourself one goal to do for the day, or one goal to do for the week. One, even the smallest one. And then when you achieve it, you know, the brain chemistry, I'll realize is that you've done something, you've achieved a goal. And then make it a little harder goal, and make it instead of having a list, you go, where do I start? One thing, and make sure it's attainable. One thing, and then you feel, and you get the payoff
I always say,
you've done.
okay, I want to write a book, but then it looks so.
Start with the first line. Start with the first paragraph.
Or, you know what, write some articles that are connected to the book.
Yeah.
And then you pull them together, and all of a sudden, half your book's done.
I was listening to Earl Nightingale material on the internet the other day, and there was one quote from him that I picked up. It said, "Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal." So it's progressive. It's not that all or nothing thing that I was alluding to. It's a bit at a time, no matter how small it is. So that's, I realized that in itself.
Well, back in 1995, when I first started learning how to design websites, I learned, I figured out how much of an impact the internet would have on business. And from then, one of my goals was to set up an online business. And the computer I had at the time wasn't powerful enough. Computers cost a lot more than they do today. They didn't have the resource. The computers weren't as powerful as they are. I think I said that already. Anyway, the software required was so expensive, there was no way I could afford it. And I kind of put it on the back burner. And as the years progressed, technology made everything that I required more accessible to me. And now the only thing that's holding me back is learning how to use a specific technology that I need to do what I want to do. Okay? And one of the things I want to do is create a website for self-employed people and small businesses. Small businesses to do online bookkeeping. Because what I've noticed is people are more willing to plug information into a computer interface or web interface than to actually plug it into a software on their desktop. Okay? So to help small businesses and self-employed people create an online bookkeeping service.
So you say, so if this is still on your list, this is still a vision or a goal,
Yeah.
what's the next step?
The next step is to learn how to do more advanced PHP scripting and the more advanced MySQL database entries. And
So we have to put that on your hot list and
yeah.
figure out if that means sign up for a course or read a book or go to the library or just play. On the
Well, what I've found is that I bought a book on mastery of PhD a couple of years ago, and when I tried reading it, it didn't make sense to me.
Somethingfreeschools.com is really good.
I found them, and they're not as good as they make it they are.
Really?
Really?
And what about,
What's the website, Jill?
what about,
W3 Schools.
I mean, it's not a school, but it does give you some,
Well, I know what I definitely need is, of course, the PhD scripting,
yeah.
right? And in the book, when I try to use examples in the book, there are steps that were missing. And also, the book doesn't tell you this, but what I found out afterwards is that you needed to have certain PhD libraries installed to make it work. And they don't tell you what libraries you need. Right?
I'm going to jump in there if I can. I want to bring it back to Barry and his presentation. Number one, thank you. Awesome. Yes, absolutely awesome. You started off with some quotes or sayings that we're used to hearing in other scenarios, but you stopped and come back to business. And in some ways, certain pieces are kick in the pants or motivation or a little bit of both. As far as going back and saying, where is everybody? And a reminder of, you have a goal, and think, your book, Hope and Heroes, and you've got some international, totally famous people in your book.
Yeah.
And
I dreamt big and work towards it.
I think it's a good reminder to all of us that we shouldn't stop and put roadblocks on our different challenges or goals. And maybe getting out to groups like this is sometimes it's the thing that gets you to take a step forward or team up with somebody or whatever it is to make some progress. So I think this is phenomenal. I think it's a great example to everybody of juggling 5 businesses and inspirational speaker for sure.
I just wanted to add one thing briefly to sort of end it is as you work on your business and life goals, and it's very important to write them down, maybe it's like pen and paper or on the computer. Write some goals that you would love to have, and you just can't because you can't. But I'd love to. So write it down. And once you've done it, go well. Why can't I? What's the reason? What's the reason?
What are the roadblocks?
Yeah, and then like if you say you want to be Prime Minister of Canada, and let's say in 10 years, well maybe not. But if you're already involved in politics and you've been working your way, maybe it is. So, but write some goals that you just can't. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. Or you don't have the connections, and realize, well, maybe you are. Maybe you aren't, and you've just been selling yourself short. So the only limitations that are there are the ones basically in our mind. What did you say?
It's in our own mind.
It's in our mind. It's in our mind. So, and if you need a great business coach, Cheryl. If you need a speaker, consider me or all the stuff that I do.
I watched a really good TEDx, and I can't remember the person who did it, but he really mixed in his photography and his speaking together.
Okay.
And I thought of you when you were saying that you were a radio speaker, and then you have the whole theme of mental health. I think that would be really good.
If you think of the person, I'd love to get the name.
I watch a lot of TEDx.
They're inspiring.
Yeah.
They're amazing, the TEDx ones. Oh my God. TED and TEDx, yeah.
I have to tell you, I was at a business networking meeting in Mississauga on Tuesday, and when we're doing a bit of a chat, and I forget the official discussion, but one comment that came out from one gentleman is, on his wish list is to have a Ferrari. And you think of lots of people who say, okay, I want a boat, or I want to be skinny, or whatever their thing is. And depends on the person. Sometimes we write it down. Sometimes people put the picture on their computer, or they put their picture on their fridge, and everybody's got their own style or their vision board or whatever going. This guy actually went and rented a Ferrari. And sat in it, drove it, took it home, parked it in the garage, felt it, did the whole thing. And I thought, wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Because it is more tangible. And maybe it increased the passion, maybe it made it more possible. And as an outsider, and I only met the gentleman once, I know he's going to get it.
Yeah.
Now, do I think he's getting it this summer? I don't know. Is it another year? Is it another couple of years? But something tells me it's going to happen. And I thought that was a really neat step for him to take. So, depending on what your goals are.
It's a smart step, too. You immerse yourself in that consciousness, and you still have to work towards it, but it increases the chance that you get there.
Actually, the thought comes to me, Larry, like when you have a goal, and you say, I've heard, but in practice always to put as much detail into it.
And detail in the visualization.
See it.
I've read that.
Rather than just say, oh, I want a Ferrari. I mean, if I can't rent one, then maybe you have a picture of it. You know, I want it this color with this color interior or something like that. But it makes it more not just a blurry.
And visualize the wind in the face, and this is bringing all the sense. This is bringing all the sense, and the person of your choice sitting beside you, and all these things on the road, on the highway that you choose, and everything. Yeah, I've read that all about the power of visualization. Yeah.
Very cool. What time is it, guys?
It's
12:56. Very good. Well, Jillian is supposed to be our leader and isn't here. So cross your fingers that she's okay. But just a reminder, Jillian's got her main thing is her Tupperware. And at the beginning I mentioned her blog. If you know business owners in that neighborhood, tell them about her blog. I think what's the blog name? I will get it for you. She's going to do some basic business cards with the blog and, something about connect to your community in York, Southwest, or whatever. And her name, of course, because that's part of the puzzle. So, if you need Tupperware, let Jillian know. Next meeting should be that third Thursday of February, which would be 20. February 20th should be the next meeting, and it's going to be in the York Southwestern area. I believe there is a Portuguese breakfast place, but I don't know the name, so I will check on it and get
Same
back.
time?
Yes. If you want to be a speaker at one of her things, it's educational and helpful, like if you're looking for more people to come, of course, then definitely connect to Jillian or connect to me, and I can connect on your behalf if need be. So around the room, did we miss anything? Something popping in your head?
I just wanted to add, I haven't seen Philip in Eugene for a couple of years. I just met Lynette. On my radio page, very Shainbaum.com for radio, there's 4 years of podcasts. I'm trying to listen to a whole range of topics. Just go to my website, click on radio, and there's 4 years of podcasts. 2013, 12, 11, 10, and 2009. Whole range of topics. From science to spirituality to all these things.
What instrument?
I play guitar, harmonica, and occasionally the horses.
Would you like
What?
to?
The horses, play the kid.
Ah.
The horses, yeah.
Because if you like, I belong to the Premier Women's Choir Canada. It's one of my
Is that what it's called? Premier Women's Choir?
the Choir Celestis. We perform, it's the 25th anniversary, we're performing in Lincoln City in March, and we will be at Running the United Church. And you're all invited, $20.
When is that?
I'll get the date to you. I know March, May, it's in May. And please join us.
We'll send the information.
Yeah, yes.
Send it to all of
I
us.
will.
Send it to one of us and tell us to share it.
Send us the
Because
information, please.
that's one thing I do. We spiritually uplift everybody who attends.
That's good.
It was sold out. You're going to have to buy tickets early. It was sold out last at Christmas, and we are good. So I just say, if you
When's the next
appreciate it,
report? When's the next
that's the one in May.
Yeah, so if you can send the email out.
So Barry, do you do performances?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you do
play
bands, or-
at senior homes
Yeah, okay.
professionally, besides a couple of my volunteer gigs. I'm playing tonight at Pine Villa Retirement Home, Jewish Retirement Home on Edmonton, just
Harmonica
east
or
of,
guitar?
guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, harmonica. Hebrew, English, and Yiddish for the Jewish ones. And,
So if we need a good time,
you can call.
thank you.
I don't really could talk. I could show you.
I
Some
play
chords.
guitar, but I you know, take it down.
Yeah, I'm not really a teacher, but I mean, you learn 6 chords. You can play.
No, I can play. I just like to take it to
I play by
I want
ear.
to play like,
I play by ear.
what's that guy's name? Jesse Cook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
It's not working, I can't think.
His fingers and
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from YouTube.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to learn from
Mine is
YouTube.
just plain.
I know.
Yeah. Play
I have-
5 minutes every day. Keep the calluses on your
That's
left
true,
hand.
yeah.
You feel it. Right hand.
I
went to carry-
now.
I went to karaoke with Barry and with Frank,
Mhm.
and yeah, Barry can sing.
Cheryl can say.
He was trying to me yesterday in PCS.
Did you? Oh,
Well, I mentioned I was on Tony Talentime twice as a kid. So,
oh my gosh.
So,
There's
go into YouTube
there's
and
a
type
step to the past.
type in Tony Talentime reunion.
Oh,
I organized and hosted a reunion in 1997. It's on YouTube. Tiny Talentime reunion. Bill Lawrence and I organized it, and I brought him in to host it. When you have a dream and you work at it, so whatever it is, keep working at the dream.
Sounds good. All right, Gemma, anything else? Okay, come practice with the code.
So,
Nothing else? Eugene, anything else?
I have problem with my hearing.
Have you been to Eugene, Oregon? There's Eugene, Oregon. There's a town called Eugene in Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a Toastmaster.
Mm.
There you go. Well,
Thank you, Cheryl.
awesome job, everybody.
Stepping up to